What do you mean Ryan will be CEO? I'm the one who saved this hotel. My voice echoed through the newly renovated lobby, bouncing off the modern, mountain-inspired decor I had spent months perfecting. Mom's dismissive wave felt like a slap in the face. Claire, honey, your brother has more natural leadership ability. You're too detail-oriented, she said, as if explaining something to a child. That's when Ryan strolled in, hands in his pockets, wearing that smug smile I'd seen since we were kids. Hey, sis, don't take it personally. Someone needs to handle the day-to-day stuff while I focus on the bigger picture. My name is Claire Anderson, and at 52, I never thought I'd find myself fighting for recognition in my own family's business. After 20 successful years in hotel management in Chicago, I had given up everything to come home to Colorado and our struggling family hotel. The irony? I was the only one with actual hospitality experience, while my younger brother Ryan had bounced between jobs, never holding one for more than a year. Here's what really gets me. 8 months ago, my dad called me in tears, saying they were weeks away from bankruptcy. I didn't hesitate. I sold my condo in Chicago, cashed in my savings, and came home to help. The hotel was stuck in a time warp, dated decor, no social media presence, and reviews that made me cringe. I worked day and night modernizing everything from the reservation system to the lobby furniture. God knows how many nights I spent hunched over spreadsheets, negotiating with suppliers, and training staff. I even used my industry connections to get us featured in travel magazines, and it worked. The transformation was incredible. The Mountain Pine Lodge went from a 2-star nightmare to the talk of the town. Our bookings doubled, and for the first time in years, we were actually turning a profit. Every detail, from the locally sourced artwork to the upgraded amenities, was carefully chosen to create an unforgettable guest experience. But standing here now, watching Ryan smirk while our parents hand him everything I've built, I realize none of that matters to them. The worst part? They're announcing his promotion at tonight's staff meeting, the same meeting where I was supposed to present our record-breaking quarterly results. I can feel the eyes of our employees on me, especially Sarah, our head housekeeper who's been here for 20 years. They all know who really turned this place around, but like me, they're forced to stand here and watch this farce play out, pretending this is somehow normal or fair. Let me take you back a bit to understand how we got here. The Mountain Pine Lodge has been in our family since my grandparents built it in 1971. I basically grew up in these halls, learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. While other kids played house, I was helping Mom with check-ins and watching Dad handle maintenance issues. The hotel was my second home, and I loved every minute of it. But Ryan? He was different. 3 years younger than me, he never showed any interest in the family business. While I was studying hospitality management in college, he was bouncing between majors, first architecture, then business, finally dropping out altogether to find himself. Mom and Dad never seemed bothered by this. He's just creative, they'd say. He needs time to figure things out. Meanwhile, I was building my career in Chicago, working my way up from front desk manager to regional director for a major hotel chain. Every success I had was met with lukewarm congratulations from my family. That's nice, dear, but when are you coming home? When are you getting married? It was never enough. When Dad called about the hotel's financial troubles, I knew exactly what needed to be done. The place was hemorrhaging money, outdated systems, inefficient processes, no real marketing strategy. The reviews online were brutal, stuck in the past, needs major updating, not worth the price. It broke my heart to see my family's legacy crumbling. I took a leave of absence from my job in Chicago, which eventually became a resignation, and dove into the rescue mission. The first month was just damage control, fixing broken equipment, updating the booking system, training staff on basic customer service. I dipped into my savings to replace the ancient carpeting and give the lobby a facelift. Every penny I spent was carefully calculated to maximize return on investment. What really gets me is that Ryan wasn't even here during all this. He was off in Denver, supposedly networking, but really just partying with his friends. He'd show up occasionally for family dinners, make a few vague suggestions about modernizing our approach, and disappear again. Yet somehow his promotion is being celebrated. From my parents' perspective, his sporadic contributions were as valuable as my constant efforts. I kept reassuring myself that it would be worthwhile, that once they saw the results, the enhanced ratings, the increased bookings, the positive feedback, they would finally acknowledge my worth. I suppose I should have been more realistic. The last 3 weeks have been a nightmare. Ryan walks around like he owns the place, making changes indiscriminately without any comprehension of how a hotel actually operates. Just yesterday, he decided to cut our continental breakfast service to save money, apparently oblivious to the fact that our breakfast ratings are one of our prime selling points. When I tried to show him the guest satisfaction data, he merely laughed and said, "Numbers aren't everything, sis." However, what truly pushed me over the edge happened this morning. I walked in to find him firing Maureen, our head of housekeeping who's been with us for 15 years. His reason? She wasn't adaptable enough with his new scheduling system. A system that would have left us dangerously understaffed during peak checkout times. I managed to intervene and save her job, but the look of humiliation on her face will haunt me for a long time. I tried discussing it with Mom and Dad. I presented spreadsheets showing our progress, guest reviews praising our recent enhancements, even financial projections for the next quarter. Dad just stared at his coffee while Mom patted my hand and said, "Dear, you need to give your brother time to find his footing. He has such wonderful ideas." That's when I saw it, the for sale sign on the old Riverside Lodge while driving home. It was our main competitor for years before falling into disrepair last season. I pulled into the parking lot, my mind racing. The property had so much potential, better views than our hotel, closer proximity to the ski slopes, and a much larger spa space. Sure, it needed work, but I knew exactly what to do with it. I sat in my car for almost an hour, looking at that sign and thinking about every time my parents had overlooked me in favor of Ryan, every achievement dismissed, every suggestion second-guessed, every contribution minimized. Something inside me snapped, or perhaps it finally clicked into place. I called my realtor right there in the parking lot. The owners were eager to sell, and thanks to my savings and stellar credit rating, I could make it happen. By the time I drove home, I had already scheduled a viewing for the next morning. For the first time in months, I felt energized, excited even. I wouldn't have to watch Ryan destroy everything I'd built. Instead, I would build something new, something that was completely mine. Let them see what they gave up when they chose him over me. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. I poured everything into transforming the Riverside Lodge into something extraordinary. While Ryan was busy throwing parties at Mountain Pine Lodge, I was working with contractors, redesigning spaces, and building a team of top-tier hospitality professionals. I named it the Summit, perhaps a bit obvious, but I wanted everyone to know exactly what I was aiming for. Word quickly spread around town. Some people called me spiteful for competing with my own family. Others, especially those who'd worked with me at Mountain Pine, quietly cheered me on. My parents initially tried to guilt-trip me. "How could you do this to your brother, to us?" Mom would ask during our increasingly rare family dinners. I just smiled and changed the subject. Meanwhile, Ryan's mismanagement was taking its toll on Mountain Pine Lodge. Their reviews began dropping, with complaints about inconsistent service, maintenance issues, even cleanliness problems. 3 longtime staff members quit within the first month of his leadership. I heard through the grapevine they had to slash their rates just to maintain occupancy. The Summit's grand opening was precisely 6 months after that fateful day in the lobby. I'll never forget my family's faces when they walked in, Mom's tight smile barely masking her shock, Dad's wide eyes taking in the packed house, and Ryan's barely concealed anger. The local paper was there, snapping photos and interviewing guests about Aspen's newest luxury destination. "You're trying to destroy us," Ryan hissed when he cornered me by the bar. "This is a direct attack on our family." I just smiled and replied, "No, Ryan. This is me succeeding despite our family." The contrast between the two hotels couldn't have been more stark. While Mountain Pine Lodge struggled with basic maintenance, the Summit was making waves with its eco-friendly initiatives. The luxurious amenities I had always dreamed of implementing at the family hotel were now a reality here, from the locally sourced restaurant menu to the state-of-the-art spa facilities. Everything was exactly as I had envisioned it. However, success brought its own challenges. Other hotels began mimicking our innovative booking system, and some folks in town, old friends of my parents, started gossiping about how I was tearing the family apart. Even some of my loyal guests from Mountain Pine Lodge felt guilty about taking sides. The real challenges began as the summit gained momentum. My former vendors from Mountain Pine Lodge felt pressured not to work with me. My mom had quite the social circle in town, and suddenly, some longtime family friends stopped meeting me for our usual coffee dates. I even lost my position on the local tourism board due to a supposed conflict of interest, but I wasn't about to let small-town politics derail everything I had built. When local vendors hesitated, I found better ones in Denver. When the tourism board dropped me, I focused on building direct relationships with ski tour operators. Every obstacle just pushed me to be more innovative and determined. Then came the biggest test of all. My mom and dad showed up at my office one morning looking worried. The bank was threatening to call in Mountain Pine's loans, as Ryan's mismanagement had finally caught up with them. They wanted me to return, not as CEO, of course, but to help Ryan learn the ropes. "We're family," Mom pleaded. "You can't just let the hotel fail." I looked at them both sitting across from my desk. In the office I had built myself, and felt strangely calm. "I offered to help 8 months ago," I replied. "You chose Ryan. Now you have to live with that choice." Dad tried a different approach. "Think about your grandfather's legacy," he said quietly. "This hotel has been in our family for generations. And I tried to preserve that legacy," I shot back. "You're the ones who handed it to someone who treats it like his personal playground." The whispers around town got nastier after that. I was the ungrateful daughter, the bitter sister, the woman who'd turned against her own family out of spite. Some days, those rumors hurt more than I'd like to admit. But every morning, I'd walk into the summit's lobby, see my vision come to life, and know I'd made the right choice. My team became my new family. Many were former Mountain Pine employees who jumped ship, tired of Ryan's chaotic management style. They understood that what I was building here wasn't about revenge. It was about creating something meaningful, something we could all be proud of. The breaking point came during the annual Colorado Luxury Hotels Awards. The summit was nominated for Best New Boutique Hotel, while Mountain Pine Lodge was conspicuously absent from any category. I was sitting in the ballroom surrounded by my team when they announced our win. As I walked to the stage, I caught sight of my parents in the back of the room. They'd shown up unannounced, probably expecting to support our family hotel, as they had for years. The look on their faces said everything. Mom was fighting back tears, and Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years. Ryan wasn't there. He had stopped attending industry events months ago, claiming they were just popularity contests. But everyone in that room knew what this moment meant. The student had officially surpassed the teacher. The detail-oriented daughter had built something better than the family legacy they had refused to entrust her with. During my acceptance speech, I thanked my team, our guests, and even mentioned Mountain Pine Lodge, where I first fell in love with hospitality. The crowd's uncomfortable shifting told me they caught my subtle dig. But it was the conversation afterward that really changed everything. A renowned travel magazine editor approached me for an interview. As we talked about the summit's success, my parents hovered nearby, clearly listening. They heard every word as I described my journey, including how being passed over for CEO had motivated me to build something of my own. "Sometimes the best success stories come from being underestimated," I said, loud enough for them to hear. That evening, the magazine editor told me they were naming the summit the best boutique hotel in the Rockies in their upcoming issue. The same issue would feature a piece on traditional hotels struggling to adapt, with Mountain Pine Lodge as their prime example. When the news broke, it felt like an explosion in our small town. Everyone who had whispered behind my back, calling me spiteful, had to confront the reality. I had created something remarkable while Mountain Pine Lodge was declining, not due to my actions but because of their poor decisions. Reflecting on it all, there's a swirl of emotions within me. There's a part of me that still aches from my parents' dismissive attitude, brushing aside all I had achieved as though it meant nothing. Yet, perhaps the larger part of me feels free. I'm living life my way, not seeking anyone's approval. Every morning as I enter the summit, I'm reminded of what I've constructed with my own hands. The lively lobby hums with energy, guests eager about their plans, staff moving with warm smiles, and the smell of fresh coffee blending with a crisp mountain air seeping in as the doors open. It's everything I had hoped Mountain Pine Lodge could be, and witnessing its success fills me with profound pride. My team at the summit has become family in ways I never anticipated. Many, like Sarah and Maria, once worked at my parents' hotel but left after recognizing the same lack of leadership I did. They've played key roles in making the summit a triumph, and their loyalty humbles me. Sarah often jokes about finally feeling her experience and ideas are valued, and I completely understand her sentiment. Outside of work, I've begun mending old friendships. I had been so focused on proving myself to my parents that important relationships faded away. Now, I'm making time for coffee dates and hikes, rebuilding connections. Some townsfolk who initially criticized my decision to compete with my family have even come round to admire my achievements. I've also started re-engaging with the community, hosting events at the summit that have helped forge old bonds and also form new ones. Just last month, we organized a successful fundraiser for the local animal shelter in our new event space. Seeing people unite for a noble cause reminded me of why I wanted to work in hospitality, to create spaces that bring people joy and comfort. However, it's not flawless. There are evenings, especially when it's quiet, where thoughts of my parents and Ryan linger. Despite the hurt, I wish things were different. I often wonder if they've ever fully understood the sacrifices I made for our family's legacy. Still, I've realized their approval isn't a necessity anymore. My success, my happiness, they belong to me and can't be taken away. For so long, I lived under their expectations, but now I'm finally living in my own light. It was about 3 weeks after the Colorado Luxury Hotels Awards when my parents reached out. They invited me over for dinner, just the three of us. I hesitated but decided to go, curious about what they wanted to say, without expecting a genuine apology. When I arrived, the vibe was different. My mom greeted me nervously and my dad, avoiding eye contact, fiddled with his watch, a habit when he's uncomfortable. During dinner, they started small, the unseasonably warm weather, the summit's latest 5-star review. I sensed they were leading to something. Eventually, my dad cleared his throat, saying, "Clara, we wanted to say we're proud of what you've accomplished." My mom quickly added, "We know we haven't always shown it, but we recognize your hard work. The summit is impressive." I wanted their words to make me happy, but they fell flat. It felt too late after years of dismissal. Instead, I nodded, bracing for what I knew was coming. And my mom dove in. "Ryan's struggling. The hotel's not doing well, and he's overwhelmed. Could you guide him? Help us get things back on track?" For a moment, I said nothing, letting their words hang while I observed them, really looked at them. My mom, her manicured nails too tightly gripping her wine glass, and my dad, studying the tablecloth like it held answers. "I offered to help a year ago," I finally replied, my voice steady yet firm. "I left my life in Chicago to save Mountain Pine Lodge, and you chose to let Ryan take charge knowing he wasn't ready. Understanding that I possessed the expertise to ensure success, you disregarded my leadership then. And now that everything has unraveled, you ask me to intervene. I'm sorry, but I cannot do that." My mom began to protest, but I raised a hand to halt her. "I'm willing to offer guidance if you desire it. I can suggest strategies, suppliers, even training programs for the staff, but I am not returning to repair the damage Ryan has caused. That is no longer my obligation." They were speechless. My dad eventually murmured something about recognizing my stance, yet the disappointment in his expression was unmistakable. My mom appeared as if she wished to argue further, but for once she refrained. Driving home that evening, I felt lighter than I had in years. Establishing those boundaries was challenging but necessary. I was no longer bending over backward to please my parents or rectifying Ryan's blunders. I was prioritizing myself, my happiness, and my future. Over the subsequent weeks, I noticed a change in my demeanor. Saying no to my parents empowered me to enforce boundaries in other areas of my life too. I stopped over-explaining my decisions to others, whether regarding work or personal choices. I became more comfortable relinquishing relationships that no longer benefited me, instead focusing on those that brought joy and support. At the summit, we achieved new milestones. Our occupancy rates were the highest in the region, and we began receiving inquiries from other boutique hotel owners seeking consulting advice. Meanwhile, my parents' hotel continued to decline, although I heard they eventually hired a professional hospitality consultant to attempt a turnaround. Ryan and I scarcely communicated, and I was fine with that. My vision, my independence, and as it prospered, so did I. Standing in the lobby of the summit one morning, I observed as sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow over the contemporary decor I had designed. A family passed by, laughing as they planned their day, while a staff member skillfully handed a couple their itinerary for a scenic snowshoe hike. It struck me then how far I had come, not just professionally but personally. For years, I measured my worth by my parents' approval, by their recognition of my contributions. Now, I realized I no longer needed that. What I had built here wasn't merely a hotel. It was a testament to my resilience, creativity, and ability to thrive despite the challenges. The journey had been arduous. Relinquishing hope that my family would change was painful. But it also liberated me. I no longer felt bound by their expectations or rejection. Instead, I felt proud of what I had created, proud of the team I had cultivated, and proud of the life I was leading. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. The Regional Hospitality Awards ceremony was the kind of event I used to dream about attending. The room was buzzing with anticipation, filled with industry leaders, journalists, and hotel owners from across the state. As the announcer began listing the nominees for Boutique Hotel of the Year, I glimpsed my mom and dad seated toward the back. Their faces were unreadable, but I sensed the weight this moment held for us all. When the summit was announced as the winner, the room erupted into applause. My team cheered as I walked to the stage, my heart pounding as I accepted the award. I glanced at my parents. My dad gave a slight nod, and my mom's eyes glistened with unshed tears. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was acknowledgement, something I had long ceased expecting but still valued in its way. After the ceremony, I joined my team in celebration. My parents didn't approach me, nor did I go to them. This was my moment, and I wished to celebrate with those who had helped me achieve it. I felt truly free from the need for their approval, free from the shadows of their choices. Success was no longer about proving them wrong, it was about proving to myself that I was capable, deserving, and enough. As I raised a glass with my team that night, I knew I had finally found peace.